Have you ever heard of a holiday so wild that people would set fire to their own homes just to celebrate? Picture this: a frozen night in the far north, wind howling through timber longhouses, and suddenly, the darkness is torn apart by roaring bonfires. Torches flare, axes are raised, and mead flows like rivers. Welcome to the Viking Yule feast, where tradition and mayhem dance together in a blaze of fury and fire. Imagine stepping into a great hall with animal skins on the floor, low benches heaped with giant slabs of roasted boar and piles of coarse rye bread. The hearth's glow illuminates carved wooden shields propped against the walls. Men draped in thick furs pound their cups on the table with raw-knuckle enthusiasm, shouting "Scal" as they down vats of homemade ale spiced with juniper and honey. Women move between benches, carrying bowls of porridge infused with dried berries and handfuls of festive nuts, sprinkling oats at small household shrines. The pungent aroma of roasting meat mixes with the heady sweetness of spiced mead. Every face is flushed with warmth and abandon, every voice a hearty roar, and every breath perfumed by smoke, sweat, and celebration. Yule in the Viking world wasn't a single day. It was a season, a liminal time when the old year ended and the new one beckoned. Starting around the winter solstice, the feast stretched on for days, sometimes weeks. Farms across Norway, Sweden, and Denmark would host traveling kin, fostering alliances and settling disputes under the mistletoe-like embrace of Yule's magical greenery. Slaves and thralls earned temporary freedom, bound by the unwritten rule that no one should bear arms against their fellows during Yule. Commerce halted. Fields lay fallow beneath snow. In that frozen stillness, the Yule feast ignited a chaotic spark, shattering the monotony of the long, dark winter. Yet, despite the seeming joviality, this was no gentle conviviality. Beneath the laughter lay an ancient belief that the gods demanded blood and fire to combat the encroaching darkness. With each hearty toast, worshippers honored Freyr, god of fertility and sunlight, and Njord, protector of seafarers. Horns were raised to Odin, the All-Father, whose ravens soared unseen above the throng. But most of all, their chants summoned Baldr, the radiant son of Odin, whose untimely death plunged the world into grief. Yule marked both mourning and hope, a season to remember Baldr's warmth and to beckon it back with sacred flames. And then came the brawls. Nothing was off limits. It began as playful sparring, two farmers rolling in the hay-strewn floor, testing each other's strength. But after the third or fourth cup of ale, play turned fierce. Men squared off in spontaneous melees by the firelight. Shields became impromptu helmets, benches served as battering rams. Faces were bloodied, bones sometimes cracked, but the crowd never hushed. They cheered on each clash as though it were part of the ritual. This wasn't violence for cruelty's sake. It was ritualized conflict, a way to purge the accumulated grudges of a year's toil. By the time dawn broke, wounds were kissed and healed by salves, and old feuds often dissolved in laughter and embraces. Amid the clangor of axes and the thud of fists, drums set a relentless pace. Women circled the edges of the hall, singing haunting laments and joyous refrains, weaving wreaths of evergreens and holly. Youths danced a wild, weaving reel, mimicking the flicker of flames. A handful of bold souls streaked outside, naked as newborns, challenging the biting wind, believing that facing the cold undressed would prove their courage and earn them protection in the coming year. But the true spectacle awaited outside. When the feast's clamor reached a fever pitch, the assembled clan would march to a nearby hill or shoreline, torches lit like fiery comets against the night sky. Long pyres, built from abandoned fishing boats, broken carts, and old thatch-roofed huts, stood ready, ominous silhouettes against the stars. A hush descended as the eldest chieftain stepped forward, voice trembling with ritual weight, and uttered words in Old Norse that echoed across generations. Then, with a crackle, the pyres ignited. Flames roared upward, sparks swirling like fireflies. The heat was fierce enough to melt snowflakes in midair. Smoke spiraled into blackness, forming ghostly shapes that seemed to dance along with the fire's glow. These weren't mere bonfires to warm the bones. They were sacred signals to the gods, bright beacons to summon the sun's return. Chronicles whisper that uninhabited offshore isles and remote hamlets were sacrificed to the flames. Empty dwellings burned so the gods would take notice and chase winter's chill away. Imagine the thrill and dread of standing on that hill, torch in hand, watching structures collapse under their own heat. Metal hinges shrieked in the inferno, wood groaned, and a river of red and orange consumed the night, as if the earth itself were ablaze. After the pyre fell into glowing embers, darker rites unfolded in the flickering afterglow. Blood sacrifices were offered at runic altars carved from ancient stones. Hoofed beasts, goats, oxen, horses, were ritually slain, their blood spattering upon the earth. In some sagas, whispers emerge of human offerings, captured enemies or condemned criminals, slain as the ultimate tribute. Historians still debate how widespread these human sacrifices were. This act, gruesome as it sounds, was believed to nourish the soil so that crops might flourish when spring finally broke through. Then came the quiet. Survivors returned to the ruins, stepping softly through ash and bone fragments, gathering hot coals to restart hearth fires in new longhouses. Smoke-tinted dawn revealed smudged faces streaked with soot and tears of awe. There was a solemn hush as the first rays of the reborn sun touched the horizon. In that moment, every heart brimmed with relief, both a celebration of survival and a plea for continued favor from the gods. "We have fed the fire," they thought. "Now may the sun feed us." Of course, not everyone endorsed such chaos. With the arrival of Christian missionaries in the 10th and 11th centuries, church leaders railed against the Yule fires as devil worship. Laws outlawed the wildest rituals. Priests preached against blood rites, calling them heathen abominations. Yet the old ways clung on. Deep in the forests, in hidden valleys, secret gatherings continued by moonlight. Over centuries, many customs were tamed. The great bonfires shrank to a single Yule log on the hearth. The wild brawls became toasts in taverns, and the sacrifices transformed into symbolic offerings of bread and wine. Today, as you hang evergreen garlands, sip mulled wine, or watch fireworks light up a winter sky, you're touching the echo of that ancient chaos. Our modern celebrations are gentler, less likely to scar flesh or burn villages to the ground. But at their core lies the same yearning: to banish darkness, to feel alive in the face of cold and death, and to draw warmth and hope from our communities. The Vikings may have tipped us the wildest version, but they taught us how to turn fear into festivity. So next time you raise a glass at a holiday gathering, take a moment to remember those who danced by torchlight, who drank until their voices cracked, who set their own villages ablaze to call back the sun. Their Yule was a festival of fire and blood, a crucible of renewal that forged bonds of loyalty stronger than any cold could break. They weren't savages, they were pioneers on the edge of winter's abyss, and in their frenzy, they discovered a truth that still resonates. Sometimes to move forward, you have to leave the old behind. Thanks for joining me on this fiery journey into the heart of Viking Yule. If you crave more tales of ancient mayhem and mystery, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. The next torchlit adventure of Ancient Odyssey is just beyond the horizon. Until then, stay curious, stay bold, and may your own celebrations always be bright.